We did that in 1985. Yeah, Christian Hill's first acoustics experiments were the early 90s. So did we get it right? No. Did we have the resources? No. But we certainly had a fairly reasonable idea of where we thought things should go, and hopefully have built on that innovation.
Hey everyone, Chris here, and welcome to another AV lockdown conversation. I have Managing Director of the PA People, Chris Dodds, on the line on the occasion of the PA People's 50th anniversary. Congrats, Chris.
Thank you very much.
You don't look a day over 49, so well done.
Oh, it's probably not unreasonable. So,
my first question for you may well be the trickiest. How do you describe what the PA People does? You're not a conventional integrator or installer or events business or a rental company. So what are you?
Look, I guess the easiest way to describe that is that we try to be a solution house, but in partnership with our clients. So, we have clients, and particularly the large venues, where they have multiple needs. They have capital needs where they need new systems. They have day-to-day operational needs where they need to have an AV department, which most of the venues are not in a position to have full-time staff. And they need maintenance and management, and over the top of that, advice. So being able to partner with those sorts of people up and down the spectrum is, I guess, the easiest way to describe it. And then, obviously we have specialties that come out of those relationships.
So you might have pioneered the whole service level agreement where other people hadn't really figured that out. Is that true?
Look, maybe we have, maybe we haven't. I would regard that as an outcome rather than as a target. Certainly we are unique because of our rental heritage that then migrated into the installation and integration business. That rental heritage means we understand about deliverables, we understand about dates that don't change. You don't come back tomorrow to an Olympic ceremony, you do it the day that it's meant to be done, and you make sure that it works the first time. And that heritage is what has evolved into that service delivery, and understanding what those events take means we're well qualified to be able to talk to clients about what they need in their venues to be able to deliver those sorts of things.
So your involvement with the PA People began in the 80s, and you took over as managing director in the early 90s. What's your reflection, I guess, on those formative years of the 80s? What was the business like, and what sort of events were you doing?
Well, look, in some ways, nothing's changed. The scale of the world has changed, and we've tried to keep up. But look, when I first joined the company, which was, as you say, pretty much 1980, they were building mixers in modular chassis in Australia. The only other people that were doing that were Jans. They were making multi-cores because Heartland, who were the Australian cable manufacturer at the time, hadn't got to making multi-core at that stage. So they were using bits of plastic tubing and pulling multiple microphone cables through it, so they made their own multi-cores. They were building amplifiers and mixer amplifiers and speakers because at that stage that stuff didn't exist. So if you follow that through to what we had done with creative audio, it's the same level of innovation. The space is different, the tools are different, the outcomes were different. And even now, creating something like the AO, the logo that we did for Tennis Australia, 4 or 5 years ago, applying that innovation, I think, is inherent. It's something that we enjoy. I would suggest that it's something we're reasonably good at. And I guess that's really what's filled through. And it's the same in the rental space. The way we rig the speakers to do the domain concerts on on Bose trees that, my generation of Bose tree, if you like, which was the 48-foot things, they still worked on what David Collins had done 10 or 15 years earlier. He did 8 Bose 800s, so way before the 802, which is where I started using them. He used 800s on Milton tennis courts for a concert for 5,000 people. So,
I got to say, I had to look up I had to look up the Bose tree. I must confess, and when I saw it, it really is. It really is something to behold. Do you want to describe it?
Well, look, it was as I said, David had done it before us, and then we used the same system to do our first Tamworth Country Music Awards, which was in the tent on the banks of the river. So way before they built a structure to put the music awards in, and then it evolved, and we were faced with a situation where the Sydney Festival was doing the opera concerts and the Domain concerts, and at that stage, the sound system was effectively a traditional double four-way, if you remember what that looks like, with W bins and 4560s stacked on the stage. But unfortunately, the roof of the stage came out as a peaked tent, and the dispersion of the system meant that it was reflecting back off the tent onto the stage. And we realised pretty quickly that there was a fundamental problem with doing sound reinforcement with the speakers so close to the audience when the control and the pattern of the system wasn't up to it. We went, well, we need to get it off the stage. We need to get it in the air. Nothing that would surprise anybody today in terms of thinking about where you would put a sound system on a concert stage now. We just happened to do it in 1985. So, it was a thing. Horns at that stage were not generally constant directivity, so horns were radial, so their frequency response was okay, but their coverage changed dramatically with frequency. And so we weren't all that enamoured with using those. And whilst we recognised that 48 Bose 802s in one spot doesn't necessarily provide what you would call textbook pattern control, it was able as a system to provide reasonable and even coverage, certainly not with a meter, but with the ear. And we were able to deliver coverage in a way that it hadn't been done before. So, those days we were using 270 cabinets to do the Sydney Domain. So
270.
Yes.
Did it sort of, were you able to get some line array kind of characteristics out of it?
Absolutely. Well, ironically, we were talking about anecdotes before. So one of the other cabinets that we had done relatively early in the time was what we call our Creative Audio Composite cabinet. And it was a cabinet that was very line array-esque. It had a pair of 15-inch drivers, one on each side, of a 4x4, 4.5-inch loudspeaker array. So the centre mid-high component was 4x4, 4.5-inch drivers. And I do remember doing a concert with that system with Jojo Sepp and the Falcons on the lawns of Parliament House in Canberra. And for that particular concert, they had put the stage on the steps firing towards the lake. And the geography of the space is that the seating plane falls away from the stage rather than lifts up behind it.
Yep.
And there was plenty of energy on the top of the front of house tower, but not so much underneath. And so, it got very boomy, very directional. So, yes, it had a lot of line array type qualities.
So what was it about, like the 802 is almost a meme now, but it's it was so influential back in the day. Like, what would be your eulogy to the 802 if you had to bury one?
Well done, good and faithful servant, something of that nature. Look, we put them in places that nobody ever intended them, but at the time we did it, I believe we were able to create some pretty unique solutions and things that worked. If you used your ears rather than your predisposition to not liking plastic boxes, then it worked better than the other solutions in the market. Would I do that again now? Of course not. Would we? We're very pleased with the line array solutions that we have, but we also know that we built that composite product, which, mind the way, was self-powered. It had an H&H M900 amplifier inserted in the back of it. We did that in 1985. Christian Huell's first acoustics experiments were the early 90s. So did we get it right? No. Did we have the resources? No. But we certainly had a fairly reasonable idea of where we thought things should go, and hopefully have built on that innovation.
Yeah, for sure. So just to, I guess, for the sake of completeness, the domain, just, I guess, describe to me what that was like, setting up for 100,000 plus people, whatever it would be there, and on a big Carol's night or.
Look, we used to take a pair of 8-ton trucks. At that stage, we were providing full production services. So we were providing the sound system and all the lighting and the early germs of what we now call event communications. So we had two-way radios interfaced with party line intercom, which again was not something that people were doing. So, I could actually, when the guys went out and put a microphone on the stage, I could talk to them from front of house and they could talk into the microphone and I could say, yes, I can hear that. And they were on a two-way radio. So, look, all of that stuff builds to where we've ended up now. The domain was a great period of time. But as most people know, we decided to move on out of some of that and more into the integration business because we thought that was the right thing to do commercially. And it's quite ironic that we've pretty much come full circle. So we're now back owning 150 cabinets of line array, and very pleased that we are.
Let's jump straight to the Olympics because it had such a huge influence over, I guess, not only your business, but the audio scene in Australia overall, I think. I guess without sort of retelling, I guess, the story of how you became to involved, but when you look back on the impact of the Olympics on your business and the scene, what are your reflections?
Look, it is, you're right, it did have a huge impact on not only our business, but on the audio market generally in Australia and on the people and the identities in that space. So, out of our involvement in the Olympics, not only were we able to bed down the integration and installation business, but effectively out of that came what we now call event communications, and the fact that we're able to supply thousands or at least hundreds and high hundreds of radios and intercom systems on the world stage. You've got what is now Norwest still plying their trade in the Olympic field as well. You've got Damien Rowe, who was working for GUVT, who effectively was working for Panasonic at the Games, delivering AV systems to Commonwealth Games and other international events. There's a lot that came out of the Sydney Olympics for the Australian event production space.
Indeed. And just to touch, I guess, on comms, what did that journey look like from there onwards, and for you to become not just a significant player in Australia, but a significant international player?
Well, I distinctly remember meeting with Peter Giddings, who was the Australian Clearcom rep back before Clearcom or Drake had been bought by Vitec. Both of those companies were bought subsequent to that, and now merged under the HME brand. I remember the meeting with Peter in our Liverpool Road offices where he was quite hesitant to be talking with us because we had the creative audio party line comm system of our own, and clearly nobody wants to be helping a competitor effectively, but we managed to work with him. We had the support of the late Larry Estrin, who was a US guru in the large-scale event comms space, and eventually with assistance from Jans, we became the supplier of the first serious matrix intercom system for a major event in Australia. And so that was what we used for the ceremonies. At the same time as we were doing the ceremonies, we also secured the contract to provide the majority of the communication systems for the venues. And that was all creative audio party line, and it was some 800 or 900 packs that we deployed for the venues. And since then, as many people will be aware, we've become one of the two major providers of large-scale intercom systems for public events worldwide. We're very proud of the fact we've got pretty much the biggest ClearCom inventory in the world, and it's good to be able to deploy that and, dare I say, keep the other guys honest.
That's excellent. And you've, I guess, in the last 20 years, amongst other things, become a big venue specialist. What's your reflections, I guess, on the role of large venue stadiums as entertainment, hospitality venues, and I guess the role of technology in those settings, and I guess the demands on the technology?
Look, it's changed very dramatically, and obviously, the Olympics was the catalyst. Prior to the Olympics became the catalyst both for architecture as well as technology. So, prior to the Sydney Games, stadiums had seats and no access, and you were struggling. I remember people struggling to get speaker systems onto the field of play at Allianz because there just wasn't enough headroom in the vomitories to be able to do things. So the architecture has changed considerably, and we were fortunate in having done Stadium Australia to be able to work with several builders, in particular Wattpac, who did 4 major venues in Queensland for Gabba and Lang Park, Robina, and
the other one.
Yeah, the other one, Carrara Stadium. We've done work in refitting Canberra and Newcastle. We were fortunate to win the contract to provide the system in Adelaide Oval a few years back. And all of those stadiums reflect updated architecture, and therefore there is an understanding that the expectations of the public in terms of technology has increased alongside of the, a genuine cold beer and a good seat. We've been fortunate to ride that wave. We've also had the opportunity to do a lot of work in the theatre space, which is quite complementary with staging equipment and sound and lighting systems. So, those two are probably what we're known for in the installation space rather than audiovisual.
And you've also noticed, I guess, your world becoming more globalized. Do you think that there will be a role for a regional specialist, as it were, such as yourself, or are you going to find yourself competing more and more with international behemoths?
Look, a lot of that has to do with with distribution policies and the way product is distributed. We are regularly asked to go and look at doing work in Southeast Asia, for argument's sake, or in the Middle East. And from a logistics perspective and the initial installation perspective, that's often looks quite attractive. But the product manufacturers' distribution policies in those places mean that generally there is no space for an SI in those spaces, even if a customer wants to use one, because all of the product distributors want to do their own installations. So you don't actually get, if you come to us, we can give you 3 product options and design options based on products from 1 or 5 or 10 manufacturers. Yeah. In those countries, generally distribution wins. So you get whatever product that particular company distributes. Equally, that also makes it hard for us to be able to provide after-sales service or a competitive bid in the first place. So domestically, things are still fine, and we're quite able and capable of competing against any of the internationals. The prices are generally managed on local distribution and on Australian labour costs, and we can provide value in both of those parts of the space. But the international stuff is quite interesting.
Mm-hmm. And I guess what's the future looking like for the PA people? I guess ignoring somewhat the giant international glitch that we're living through now, but what's on the horizon?
Look, we're actually pretty comfortable with the glitch. The glitch is painful. There's no doubt about that. We're talking on Thursday, the 7th of July. 3 days ago, my biggest job of the year got cancelled again, being the Grand Prix. That's painful. Fortunately, it looks like there might be some international work that we can pick up to fill that hole. There's obviously clearly quarantine challenges that the government doesn't seem to understand in that part of the conversation, but we'll battle on through with that. The integration business is doing quite well. It is competitive. There's no two ways about that. But again, we seem to be able to find a way to provide value and cut through some of that. There is a lot of infrastructure work going, and there is a reasonable component of that in the spaces where we operate. So, at the moment, things are okay. Professional sport is generally doing okay, and we do more of that than we do corporate theatre. So we're in a reasonable space, and looking forward to coming out the other side.
Mm-hmm. That's good. I'll leave it there, Chris. Thank you for your time, and I do wish you and your business all the best. I know that there are lots of alumni from the PA people who would be wishing you all the best. Maybe some not. I don't know. But thanks for your work. We respect you and appreciate you, and see you again in another 50 years.
Well, we hope to be here alive and kicking. May not be me at the helm, but I trust that there'll still be something of the business in the market.
Fantastic. Thanks.
Thanks, Chris.